Mohammed Ismail says, could you provide an update on the current situation in Ukraine and offer insights into the potential direction of the ongoing conflict? Okay, so what's happening? There's not much movement on the map, right? Usually, when you have a war that's ongoing in which one nation invades another nation, you're gonna see changes. You're gonna see lines on the map changing, right? The current whatever the current battlefront is, whatever the front lines are, those lines keep changing, and territory exchanges hands and all and so on. So let's go to the map of Ukraine, s- of the region, since we are dealing with a geopolitical issue. So here is the map. We go towards Ukraine, and so this map that you see over here on the screen, it doesn't represent what's really happening on the ground. Crimea, you can see, is now part of Russia. Russia has retaken Crimea. That happened in 2014. That's old news. And when it comes to Russian advances in Ukraine, they certainly have taken the Luhansk, Donetsk regions, which is the eastern parts of Ukraine, Mariupol, I'm sure, and so on. They haven't moved on Odessa yet, and they are kind of on the southern bank of the Dnieper River when it comes to the city of Kherson. Uh, and that's the kind of situation we have, and it's kind of a frozen war situation now. Okay, there isn't much happening. Of course, the war has taught everybody else a lot of lessons on as to what kind of technologies are now going to be employed on the battlefield in 21st century battlefield. So when the war started, you had a certain set of weapons that was being used, tanks and all the standard weapons. But as the war progressed, the weaponry changed. Now you have lots of drones that are being used, loitering weapons, loitering munitions, suicide drones, kamikaze drones, the Shahed 2 drones. There are anti personnel drones that are being used. There are minefields that have been laid all over the place. It's a disaster, of course. It's a disaster. From a humanitarian perspective, from a civilian perspective, it's an absolute disaster. Okay. Uh, but the lines on the map aren't changing much now. There are battles going on, and it's low intensity warfare, and there are missile strikes happening. The Russians are striking at various Ukrainian positions, including mercenary positions in which you may have fighters, combatants from other countries apart from Ukraine. North Korea seems to have entered the fray in some way on the side of Russia. Ukraine is also hitting out at Russia in some way or the other, drone strikes or missile strikes. There is the big question that's on everyone's minds right now is whether the Americans will allow the Ukrainians to use long range strike weapons such as long range missiles, 100 kilometers plus range missiles. That's medium range, short to medium range, but yeah, in the context of this war, it's long range. And the Russians have said, Mr. Putin has said that if the Ukrainians use long range missiles that are or weapons that are NATO weapons, then we're going to treat that as well as a red line, and we reserve the right to retaliate and respond through any means necessary, which kind of tells you what it means, right? So there is always the danger of escalation. Okay, this is a proxy war. It's a proxy war between Russia and the West. Russia and NATO. NATO is owned by the US. So it's essentially a proxy war between Russia and the US. The proxy is Ukraine. And the first level of the proxy is Ukraine. The second level is NATO. Okay, NATO isn't directly involved, it's indirectly involved. And so on. So that's the situation. It's a frozen conflict to a large extent. It's a slow war scenario. Not much is happening right now. It has the potential to escalate very rapidly. And Russia is very content to wait as long as it needs to achieve its objectives. The objectives are the denazification of Ukraine and the demilitarization of Ukraine, and Ukraine becomes a neutral nation and no longer poses a threat to Russia. The kind of threat means, what do we mean by that? It means becoming either a member of NATO or a proxy of NATO, which it currently is. So Russia eventually would want to effect a regime change in Kiev, get rid of Mr. Zelensky and get somebody else, a pro-Russia person in place, and they would say that that's a neutral government, and perhaps the territories of Ukraine will change forever. The map of Ukraine will change forever. That's a situation. Um, Not much movement on the map happening right now. but it is a very dangerous flashpoint when it comes to the global geopolitical order. There's the potential for very rapid, unforeseen escalation that could happen anytime. So it's one of the most dangerous situations that we are currently facing in the world right now. That is overall the situation